Alright. Sorry for that delay I did. I'm making sure everything is in organized and in correct order. Welcome to my discussion. I know it took a while to get everything up and running, but so far everything is going smoothly and well to the point where it's actually making a little bit more sense of what I'm actually putting on. So before we get started, I'm going to make sure that everything is working perfectly fine. I also want to make sure that everything is going in correct order before I'm able to continue. So what I was doing. So I'm going to go ahead and just oh, you can select your I'm just going to be the red dude. The game I'm going to be playing for this discussion while I'm talking is, of course, Cuphead, if you haven't heard. So this is a while ago game. So this thing has been like there for centuries, so hopefully you guys will like this. Okay. I'm getting started on this thing. For some reason I'm having some trouble. You can see I already did a lot of stuff on this. Okay. Yeah, my audio, that's why I'm trying to get it all working before we go. Okay. I think it's good already. So welcome. This is Orlock 425. If you before we get started, I wanted to say that this. If you guys haven't seen the store, or what you call the admission store, the one I barely just updated, go ahead and check that out, because this store that I previously put in there is really updated at its best for the fans and the community. If you enjoy watching my videos, if you like Jimmy Wilson, or you just like the stuff that I present, go ahead and check that out. It's in the store tab, or including the links, so you can able to check those out and see what I have to offer in that storefront, because I barely just updated in the previous one, so now it looks much better than before, and it's definitely a thing that I would recommend to take a look at. So the whole point of this that I'm going to talk about in this talking discussion live, this is a old series I'm doing review basically, and for this review I'm going to be talking about my youth comedy romance or I call it romance comedy is wrong as I expected. This was a while back in 2020 with the last season 3. If you haven't watched that, I recommend it, check that out. But the whole review 1 through 3, I'm going to be talking about that, and while I'm talking, you guys can enjoy the game I'm about to be playing, just so that you have something fun to enjoy and be thrilled while this is going on. So hope you guys will like this, and let's get right into this. So what I'm about to say is this is a story a while back long where I didn't know any of this thing, and I didn't know if it was going to be good. So as I gotta say, this is a story about a man who doesn't really want anything to do with life, and doesn't want anything to do, like, in other words, he doesn't want to do something that makes him want to be with life itself, something like that. So he chooses to be negative, he chooses to not be loved around people, and chooses to be like one of those individuals who just doesn't want anything to do with life. And so what happens is this guy named Hachiman Ikigaya, that's the main character, he ends up in a position where he just doesn't want anything to do with what life has to offer him, since he hated everything around. In other words, he believed that his youth was a lie and that everything about feeling, loved in it was all despaired, and in ways that just did not work. And it got to the point where it's like he was actually, saying something like that with the professor, and that's when the professor just couldn't deal with it no more and realized this has to stop. So into that point, once it got to the professor, he ends up realizing that when the professor looks at his work and sees that, what to say, he ends up seeing that there's the professor sees that something looked completely wrong, and that something did not look right with this professor. That got to the point where she was being serious, that this is not a joke, that whatever what this was about was completely bad. And so he takes it off the opportunity, like the professor decides, I'm gonna take this opportunity. Oh my goodness, I already died. I'm gonna take this opportunity to, what's the right word to say this? I'm like, he was gonna take this opportunity to try to fix his little problem that he's dealing with, which he's refusing to accept life. He's refusing to do things that are completely unacceptable, and he takes him to this club as his punishment because he didn't really like the way he was presenting himself. But instead of making him just redo the damn thing, she instead takes him to a club that can actually help fix his issue that he's dealing with, as a favor and punishment towards his thing. And I'll just continue to die. So in that time, he discovers another main character, which his name is Yukino, which she is a brilliant person who knows and does things that, by far is one of my time, the famous female anime from my, as one of my favorites of all time. And she does a marvelous job to just see the issue right in hand that Hachiman was just basically discovering for himself. And so then at that point on, when he finds out that this club is not an ordinary club, it's a service club that helps students that need to be independent, and then from then on he goes through every case, just solving issues at ease with all these students that are having issues. And due to the entire series, let me tell you, it is really, really good. I thought it was gonna be just basically drama to solving cases that are just basically people that are independent, but more likely it's more like they're solving issues that are problems with the main characters and the students that come across obstacles that lead to issues. And of course there's another main character named Yui, which she is a little supportive, and I'm just doing extremely bad in this one. This Yui character is another main character who supports these two and tries to bring them more together and hang out more, as you say, more like friends that need more attention, since both Yuniko and Hachiman don't get along very well. So through the entire series, they still they do their best to try to make the comments for themselves. And so through those comments, they do a lot of service. They do things that I wouldn't even expect that this person was capable of doing. So he was able to get through that really quickly and go through. But during their series, he ends up finding friends. He ends up finding things that really help the situation that he's really going through. And one of his problems that he's having, which he basically has the issue is his negativity, that he just wants to be alone. He just doesn't want anybody around. And so his friends and around trying to change his ways and perspectives to that. So the first one that comes around and is an awkward person is we call him Zato. You call him, it's a hard name, but it's like Yushikoro or something like that, which he basically he assistants him not very. You don't see him that much. He's like a supportive character, but he assistants Hachiman in the ways that he shows that his gratitude, that he wants to be there to lend hands. Sometimes he wants to be there to give him his attention, and even though he has this weird fantasy personality character that really is kind of crazy, he still manages to help Hachiman as much as possible. Not too much, but it gives him his attention that he wants to completely make for the better of fun, that gives him the courage to continue moving forward. But during his time, as the seasons go through, he gets really struggles and he gets through obstacles where he's faced with one conclusion. Rather, should he go through an obstacle that he doesn't like? Should he continue making his path that leads him to being in a straightforward? So as he moves forward, each and every challenge gets much, much harder. And then when you get to season 2, since season 1 he was dealing with a lot of like festivals and stuff between relationships of course Unico and Yui, how they both had like different type of perspectives on the way they view stuff. He still finds a path that could help out, and with the situations that he comes through, which are very, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. What I witnessed and saw from my perspective through when I was looking at these stories, he always had his attention towards his sister, which was Komaji, and she is really good, and she teaches sometimes Hachiman not really pleasant, the things he shouldn't do as a brother. He does get back to him with the professor, and he ends up trying to do something similar to that. And of course, the professor's still an anxious that doesn't want him to leave this how you say this? He doesn't want him to leave the club. She does everything she can possibly can to ensure that she doesn't leave. He doesn't leave that club. And so in the time being, he's struggling to trying to figure out new methods and new paths to like get through and try to overcome that issue that he's dealing with. So when the time came when he was dealing with the problems at hand, when it came to season 2, he started like doing his own thing, which had curses on him as well. And these curses were, he was always having negative and hating people, because you see his whole story is trying to change his way he's respecting, the way he's like viewing negativity and trying to get him to positive and showing that there's a better life, there's more like things. In other words, to summarize it, the whole point of this story that they're trying to do is they're trying to make him feel like there's not always the bad side of life that he always intends of doing, that there's always something good out there that he doesn't realize, and there's always people that do care about him, and doesn't make him feel like he's like so like out ease, or make him feel like he doesn't like want to be a part of life. And it happens to sometimes a lot of individuals who see life as negative because their way they're being treated and stuff that they don't like. And so what he does is basically he tries to do opposite and try to stay in the shadows so he doesn't be seen very often. And these followers, and of course the professor, does everything they power to ensure that he gets not only attention, but he sees the other side of life, and he helps individuals who do have a struggle. But even though I do appreciate him, with those struggles, it's season 2 is where it really picks off, where he really starts seeing how pain really does get when it gets to him. And it gets to the point where he struggles so much that he can't bear through this. And so what I'm trying to say when he's bearing through the pains and struggles of the person that he starts to care about, it really starts to hit him to the point where he's like, you don't know what he wants to do and what he wants to become in his life. And during that, he starts seeing obstacles where no matter every time he tries to get out of something or tries to get in something, he starts realizing that things do not end up becoming as often, and he ends up going back to the spot where he's just having another issue, or he needs help and he needs, to find something that can really get his face off. And this game is really difficult. It is. What I'm trying to say, every time he looks at his path, he seems to always come obstacles. And though he does get attention, he does make some problems then and there. The thing that really bothers him the most, even though he meets new faces and meets different obstacles, and this mouse is not gonna work out for me. Each character he meets have different opinions. Like Kawasaki, another character that's supportive, has an opinion on how he represents. Another one, which name is of course Haruno, which is Yunoko's sister, always sees different side, or whether he should do this or he shouldn't do that. Sometimes the sister always tries to find ways of saying, hey, even though you feel bad or even though you don't feel pleasant, she sometimes tells him the truth that sometimes you can't do this, sometimes you can. So it really makes it like a hard objection to know what is he wants in his life. But here's what I was saying earlier, why it hits him. He did something pretty bad during the time of the because in the first season, he near the end, he was really always with his negativity, like he always was, and he always had something that he just didn't want, and that led him to realizing that even though he's hurting others, it does get back to him. And then when season 2 starts getting back to him, he starts to realize, I'm messing up, I'm doing something wrong, or whatever that may be. It starts to get really out of hand to the point where he ends up making this marvelous speech, which starts to realize that there's more than life that has to offer him, and what he's doing wrong is basically just not looking at that picture of why that changes. And slowly and truly through that speech, he starts to see that life starts to change around him, that he starts to see something that he really cares about. And during the time that he starts seeing this, he starts changing the people around him, not only not seeing how friends are, but seeing how close people he starts to become really are, including Unico, who starts to having feelings for. Every time he goes through obstacles, and instead he starts changing his character and personality all around through every case that he finds with every student with their problems, including the student council. I mean, the student council, let me tell you, it's mostly in towards the end of season 1 through the entire series. You're never gonna get through the ever seeing the student council, and most likely it starts to hit you. It starts, well, not hit you, but most likely hit him when he comes through season 3, when even though he's not interested in doing a lot of these tasks they're doing, and most likely he's not interested with this event, which usually it's a high school event called prom. Basically, he starts to realize when, how you say this, when the prom starts to happen and he's not interested, it starts to hit him when he realizes that parents of course, the main character Unico starts to interfere and starts to see, since he had encounters with them during season 2. And so when that happens, he has no choice but to interfere and to show that his support, that he wants to do everything he can to put it to a stop. And no matter how much times he tries and how much times he finds stubbornness between the two characters, would almost leads to them fighting. But unfortunately, he remembers thanks to the professor through a showdown that he decides maybe he should do something like that. Maybe he should come with across, doing his own ways of helping. So through, let me say this once, through the entire season 3, it really took a turn on me to the point where I really had myself rooting for this character and rooting for both of them to actually finally commit to each other, and finally, I don't want to spoil anything, but in some point something good happens that leads him to actually not only show his feelings, but show his life changing around, that he wants more than just being this negativity character where he doesn't care about anybody but himself, to actually feel some generous and some pride that he actually always wanted. And this pride always, had something to make use for his life than just being this person that doesn't care about or doesn't want anybody around. So during that time, he starts to see that each of this thing that he went through, the obstacles and stuff that he faced, the whole story that he did changed not only his way he did things, but his way he made things happen. And what I've got to say is, through that, he starts to see that it's not always about the people that you always hate, but it's about supporting them in the way that you can enjoy yourself and make you feel like you actually want to be a part of this. You want to do something that's more for yourself than just being selfish for others, like more for others than yourself. And so through the whole 3 seasons that I witnessed, the entire genre of this whole entire plot, this character did a marvelous job, not only for helping in cases, but in my opinion, in helping his physical relationships, and that no matter what, he did it for not just his family but for friends. He did in ways that helped not for himself but for the way he wanted to make it useful for their other his clans as well, including the friends that helped him along with, no matter how many times he felt sad or angered or felt very displeased about how disappointed he was. There's always somebody in the supportive characters that always with him all the way. And I still think this series is still one of the best, and you should just take a look at it for yourself to understand what I'm all talking about from the entire perspective. My review so far, I still gotta give this whole entire season an 8 to 9 out of 10 because of how much the director and the writers accomplished this to make this series actually happen and actually want you to witness more than just this one showdown or one entire case that doesn't just makes it like just, oh, let's do some funny stuff. And let me get me wrong, comedy will still always be there and it'll still make you laugh, but when you don't nail it down in the right points, when you make it too much of it, you start killing the story. And that's what happened to the recent anime ones, or the recent animes did too much of that and it messed up the story to the point where it's like you didn't want to watch it at all. So what this one managed to do, it managed to give your hearts into it. It managed to make you feel for these characters, and it actually did feel like you were a part of just this big bash of one bash of like wanting to solve problems after problems and wanting to always be, always in a fix to make sure that the characters that they're being faced, or the characters that they're going through, were always going to be like there no matter what, helping along the way to stop whatever problems that starts happening. Because I couldn't see alternative out routes where his life would have been over then and there, and through that it could have really like messed up his life from that. But thanks to his sister, and it was because of his sister that made her change his respective, which was Komaji. She, even though she wasn't like in her best plot, she did her part in being the supportive sister as much as she can be to the Hachiman, and this, and even though she was always acting in her weirdest, she did understand why he acted like that, and always wanted to always make sure that she was always there for her brother no matter what. And so near the end, she does shine more and more in season 3 of how much he cared for the brother, and always wanted to make sure that no matter how many times he goes through stuff, no matter how many times he feels sad, she wants to be there to just support him. And that and does make him cry, no matter how much he doesn't see that. He does sees how much cryiness he ends up getting. So there's that one that I could say, oh shoot, I didn't see that there. I could say the whole the situation for this is something that you must check out, you must look at, because this whole in series is something that really brings like a little, like, how you say this? It brings like something that you probably would be interested if you're into drama series, and you really want to not just have like a drama series where, oh yeah, it's something like realistic life. Like, you want something with expression, face motion, you want things that are solving stuff. This is the type of series I would go with, and this is something that it's recommend, a TV show that you should check out and watch if you haven't watched it already. So as this whole review about to wrap up, I do gotta say one thing about the characters that I enjoyed the most. The most characters I enjoyed were Unico, Yui, and of course Hachiman. Those three, including not much of Hayano, because I know Hayano is a supportive, but most of the supportive did. Let me get it wrong. All these supportive did a good job, and by far are the best supportive you can honestly get, because they did their good with the joking, they did their good with the rhyming, they had their drama, they even showed the main characters the rights and wrongs that he was doing, including even though it wasn't the best, they did put ups and downs toward them, to the point where it actually showed that there's something that you can change even though you don't like it or not. So by the characters, I mean, as the main characters that I just told you from before, these ones I really enjoyed, because they had not just their emotions, but they had their supportive to the story, including, not limited to, they actually gave it all their might through their voice acting as well. Like, you can tell the voice actors really wanted to show their expressions towards these characters, and they actually did in a way that actually really, and not only it impressed me, but it showed something that really enjoyed the time being for their own situations, and come across from again and again through each other. Because even though in season 1 he's barely getting new to this, through season 2 and 3 he finds himself trying to figure out what she should do, what's going on, or what should he become through this, even though it's not the same anymore. And it really hits them. So you gotta give it to the props for Unico, most likely, because she gives him this feed that she wants him to be saved. Like, she's asking to be saved, she's asking to do this, and that's what Hachiman really wants to do, is make sure he does this for her and saves her, so no matter what, they end up having a better future for each other. And so at the end of the day, I was satisfied with everything their performance did, and everything that the writers of the manga did, including the ones that did behind the scenes in anime. They did a pretty good job updating it and making it as the best they possibly could be. And so that this review that I'm doing was by far the one that I probably recommend you checking out and taking a look at from this story. And my personal opinion of how this thing really did a fantastic job of showing how much they really did put efforts in caring about these characters. Because it could have been a really bad story if they didn't care much, or they ruined the characters and decided to do like similar to Pearl Harbor. Have you seen those characters, how they messed it up? So they actually did not follow those footsteps, and they actually went with the right path and showing what these characters really felt and really felt did for not just for the school, but for the people around them, including their friends as well, to ensure that they came with a successful future, and that by the end of the seasons, I still felt satisfied that this by far made it happen and made me feel like this really done it as one of the popular and best anime TV shows I ever seen from the ones I previously watched. So again, this is the review, of course, of my youth romance comedy is wrong as I expected. Please watch this TV show. You really will enjoy it if you're into drama and comedy romance, because this has both of them, and it does go through one season 1 through 3. So it's really long chapters, gonna take a while, maybe like weeks upon days to finish. So my recommendation, if you haven't watched it, check that out. You can find them rather in Church Row, or you can find them by just watching them in other anime sites. There's many ways to watch it. If you're just one of those people that are really like have alternative ways of watching it, then be my guest to do that method as well. I'm not gonna say that kind of method, but that's my recommendation. And thank you again so much for listening to my feedback. Even though some of it was confusing, I managed to give my own rating and my own review of why this it was one of the best I ever watched, and what the character Unico is still my favorite of all the girls I've seen. She's still one of my top favorites that really gave it a bright in her performance and character of the TV show. So thank you again so much, and we'll see you on another talking discussion from your friend Orlock425. Thank you again so much, and bye bye.